the trickster, the liar. This is Loki, the trickster Warframe. Loki focuses on stealth and subterfuge to play his games. Confusing and annoying the enemy is his delight. Loki's passive allows him to wall latch for a full minute. This is the most useless passive in the game, and unfortunately gives people very low perceptions of him at first glances. Loki can be a very fun frame to play, but he is also very old, and his focus is not dealing damage. His focus is on stealth and hindering the enemy. But seeing something like his passive, which makes it so wall-latching, something most people barely ever do, lasts for a little longer, makes some people get put off from him. Which is very unfortunate, but maybe I'll convince you of that throughout the rest of this. Deploying a holographic image of himself, Decoy takes pressure off of Loki and forces enemies to attack the decoy. For the duration, the decoy has increased threat, causing enemies to be less likely to attack Loki and his allies. The decoy does have a small amount of damage it inflicts, being mainly puncture and slash damage. However, it's nothing to write home about. Decoy lasts until the ability runs out or is killed. Decoy is a very good ability for distracting enemies and keeping certain defense objectives safe, if placed correctly, as well as giving allies some breathing room if overwhelmed. Invisibility cloaks Loki and causes enemies to be unable to see him for the duration. You know, 'cause he's invisible. Enemies can still hear his weapon fire, however, but will have difficulty striking Loki. Switch Teleport is one of Loki's most recognizable abilities. Switch Teleport causes Loki to switch positions between himself and a target. Afterwards, Loki will gain a short burst of movement speed increase. Along with this, enemies switched will momentarily cause their allies to attack it, confusing them for Loki. The target doesn't need to be an enemy, however. Switch Teleport can be utilized to reposition downed allies, for instance, to a safer location. One fun tip is that if you're on the plains and see one of those little one-man flyers, you can switch Teleport with the pilot and just steal their little ship. It's kind of funny. Switch Teleport is a very good ability for confusing enemies and getting Loki closer to the fight during invisibility. However, it is not always useful in every situation. With a wave of his hand, Radial Disarm causes enemies within range of Loki take impact damage, and causes enemies to become disarmed. In the infested case, very literally. Enemies will be unable to pick up their weapons, and be forced into melee, making them easier to deal at a distance, in most cases, except for the infestation, because, again, they're all melee. Some flying enemies will also become grounded. Radial Disarm causes enemies to be easier to handle, removing them as a threat in most cases. That pretty much sums up Loki as well. He makes enemies easier to handle by distraction and sabotage. He doesn't buff his friends, he doesn't debuff his enemies, he doesn't deal massive damage. He confuses and bewilders, and to me that's fun, because he's so different from most of the other frames we get. His entire thing is just being a nuisance to the enemy, making them have a harder time attacking Loki and his allies. I highly recommend Loki for anyone looking for a stealth-based Warframe. At rank 30, Loki has 280 HP, 280 shields, 105 armor, and 225 energy. He has a Nerimon aura slot, along with 1 Vazarin and 1 Madurai polarity. Loki Prime has an additional 30 armor, 40 energy, and an additional Vazarin and Nerimon polarity. Loki's primary blueprint can be purchased from the market, with his parts being farmable from the Hyena Pack Assassination mission on Neptune. Now let's see him in action one last time. Deception is a tool, Tenno, and you are an artisan.